Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Skye and today we are doing an updated eyeshadow palette collection. I love to do these every single year and just document like how my collection has changed, grown, shrunk. Every single palette that I own is from an indie brand, so we're gonna have a lot of indie goodness in this video. Lots of colours, neutrals, a lot of different things. My collection has changed a lot this year because I have like decluttered a lot of things and I'm really happy with how it is now. I hope this video is still entertaining to you. We're gonna be chatting a lot about palettes, about my favourite formulas, all of that good stuff, and this video is gonna be a long one, so without further ado, let's get right on into it. Alright, so welcome to my eyeshadow palette collection. I'm really happy with the size of my collection. There's a lot of favourites in here, and I, not too long ago, recently did a declutter where I decluttered a bunch of palettes that I wasn't really getting much use out of and weren't really sparking joy. So this is the most updated palette collection of 2022. I will let you know what palettes were sent as PR and which ones were purchased, and some of these were given as gifts from like family and friends. So without further ado, let's get started. I love talking about palettes. This is my favorite video to film every single year. Let's go by brand, shall we? So let me just organize things. Okay, so I think I'm gonna start off with one-off palettes that I only have one from a certain brand. We'll leave all of the ones that are kind of grouped together last. Let's start off with this beauty, the Beauty Bay Wilderness palette. This palette cooked up a storm last year when it was released, and I bought this right when I launched my brand Rain Cloud Candles as like a little like well done treat for myself, and I really like the formula in here. Beauty Bay's formula really surprised me. Like, I tried their Pastels palette, which I will forever say I have a vendetta against that palette. That is the worst palette I've ever tried. It can burn in hell. But the formula of these 20 pan palettes are just so good. If you want to see like a review of every single one of the Beauty Bay 20 pan palettes, my friend Alex by AlexPK on Instagram, she has all of them and she's reviewed all of them. I'll link her down below. I'll link anyone that I mentioned down below, but yeah, if you want to see Alex's review on all of the Beauty Bay palettes, she has all of the 20 pans. And this color story is so good. I don't understand why Beauty Bay makes these limited edition. I think their 20 pans are the best palettes that they do. They're the most like beautiful, like curated color stories. And I think 20 pans is like a good, like that's like the maximum I like when it comes to eyeshadow. Like I don't want more than 20. 20 is plenty for me. I love the mix of like grunginess and the brights in here. The shimmers feel like Colourpop Super Shock shadows. They are so squishy and like sparkly and beautiful. I love the shade Lime, and these two reds down here are like, anytime I need to reach for reds, I reach into those. I bloody love this palette. I need to whip it out again. But yeah, I was so tempted by a lot of the Beauty Bay 20 pans, but the thing that mainly stops me is the fact that they're limited edition, but I couldn't say no to this one. It's just too beautiful. This next palette is one of my absolute favorites in my collection. This is the Geology Cosmetics Pilbara palette. It looks like this. This was sent to me in PR, and I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, but this is one of my most used palettes in my collection. Definitely it's in my top 5. I've hit pan in a Starry Sky right here, and I can see like a massive dent coming into Biff and Spinifex. The mattes in here are beautiful, like so silky, pigmented, easy to work with. The only shade that I actively dislike in this palette is this one right here called Chert. It's just a bit too firm and not really pigmented enough for me. Starry Sky is a wonderful iridescent. I mean, I've hit pan in it. It's one of my favorite iridescents in my collection. Every time I wear this palette, I feel absolutely gorgeous. It's one of my favorite neutral palettes in my collection. This one and another one are tied as my favorite neutral palettes. But this is also just in general one of my favorite palettes. I love it so much. And Geology Cosmetics are a indie brand based in Perth in Western Australia, which is where I'm from. So the brand just kind of like tugs at my heartstrings in that sense. Like it just reminds me of home. I can't wait to see what this brand releases next because I love this palette, and it's a really nice size too. Like it's a cool shape. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what they release next. Okay, the next palette is a tiny little quad, and this is the Copacetic Cosmetics Lunar Quad. It's basically a quad of their pressed flaky formula, and I got this as a gift from my friend Katie. And I really like this palette as like a complimentary. Like I always use it as like a singles palette in a way, because I like using this to like top off other shades. if I'm doing like a look where I do graphic liner and I just want like a hint of sparkle on the lid, I usually whip one of these out and like I put it all over my lid. I love this shade right here, especially this like green shade. I don't know what it's called. I think it's called Silk. The name's on the back. I don't know like how it's arranged and stuff. I'm not really good at that stuff. It's a really cute little quad. I'd be curious to try out their, I think it's called their Victorian quad. It's their like iridescent flaky quad because I feel like I'd get even more use out of that one. I'm curious to try more flakies and just shadows from Cosmetica Cosmetics in general, but they haven't really released many things that I've been like, oh, I want to place an order, because obviously I live in the UK and shipping is a bit of a bitch, so yeah. But I do have the Victorian quad on my wish list. Sticking with the small palettes, this next palette is the Nebula Cutie Palette Coral. This palette is adorable. It's a cute little 6-pan that's like peachy, corally, like bronze tones. I really, really love it. I love this shade Mandarin right here. It is just fantastic. I remember when I used to work at my old job, I would use this palette like all the fucking time because it's just such an easy one to just whack on. The duochromes in here are beautiful. I even really like this like copper tone, like coral amber shade. It is really wonderful. The mattes are lovely. I don't like that this is a satin, but you know what? I wish it was a matte, but this is such a cute little palette. Nebula's formula is a really, I feel like Nebula's quite underrated in their like eyeshadow palette formula. It's really fantastic, and I hope they continue this like cutie palette like series because I think it's just such a cute little 6-pan. I would be curious to try out their, what's it called? The side-by-side palette, like that neutral palette, but I don't need more neutrals. Keeping with the pink theme, we have potentially my most expensive palette in my collection. I believe it is, I could be wrong, but this is the Natasha Denona Love Palette. I think they've discontinued this, which is so sad, and this was a gift from my friend Kat, which is just, oh, I'd been lusting after this palette since it released, and when my friend Kat gifted it to me a couple years ago, I just was in awe. I do believe that Natasha Denona's formula, as much as I really do like it, like I really like the mattes, the shimmers, like the duochromes are really lovely, and there's a lot of variety of formulas in here. They also have like the cream to powder formula, like creamy matte. I don't remember what they're called. As much as I really like this kind of like midi palette size and her formula, I don't think it's worth the money. At least for me, like it takes a lot for me to spend like this much on a palette, and I feel like I still would have purchased this palette. I almost did so many times, so when I got it as a gift it was like incredible. And I'm not disappointed in it, but I just think that it's just a bit expensive for me, personally. But I love the colour story in here, these pinky tones, they're so romantic. Love the duochromes in here. And I love that Natasha Denona's palettes are magnetic, so like you can pop these out with your singles and stuff. I think that makes it really versatile. I love the big mirror in here. It is a great palette. I wish this wasn't limited edition. I know she's come out with another midi palette recently. She's come out with quite a few actually, but I think the most recent one is called like My Dream palette, I believe. I really like the look of that one, but for the price, I don't think I'll buy it, but yeah. I'd be curious to try more of Natasha Denona's like midi palette formats if any color stories call out to me. Okay, the next palette is the Lethal Cosmetics After Dark palette. This one, oh, I bloody love. The thing I love about Lethal is the fact that you can like customize every single one of their palettes that they have like pre-made. So like if you don't like certain shades, you can just take them out, replace them with their other singles. And you can buy these individually as well. Like they're very like customizable. I really love Lethal. I really love that about Lethal. And I'm really curious about their 1UP palette, but I find that, not gonna lie, I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but as much as I love Lethal, all their palettes are kind of looking the same to me. They all kind of look very similar, like this one, the 1UP palette, a couple of the other ones, the Teresa is Dead palettes. They're all kind of this sort of, like, variation of color story, and as much as I do love it, like I really love this color story, I love this arrangement, I love the mattes. Lethal mattes are just top tier. I'm just a bit like meh, like I'm not really super interested in their other palettes apart from the 1UP palette, but I think that's because it's very similar to this one, and I feel like they've like with time they've perfected their shimmer formula more and more, because I remember when this palette released and I bought this on release, this was the best shimmer formula that Lethal have done, but I think in their like more recent palettes they've just continued to improve it, so I really like this one. It's a really cute color story, really inspiring to me, and it's inspired by like the 90s. And even though I wasn't born in the 90s, I was born in the early 2000s and I grew up in the early 2000s. A lot of 90s stuff carried over to the early 2000s, so this makes me feel nostalgic. And the final one-off palette that I have is this one from Colourpop. This is the Darth Vader palette. I did get this in PR. I'm no longer on Colourpop's PR list, but I still wanted to keep this palette. I did have a few other palettes from Colourpop, but I did declutter them because I wasn't really reaching for them. I wasn't super inspired. But this one, the Darth Vader one, it's so unique to my collection. Like these cool toned, grungy tones, like I have nothing like this in my collection. And this was also the first package that Colourpop ever sent to me. I'm no longer on their PR list, but this one kind of holds a special place in my heart because of that. There's a Super Shock shadow in here, which I really, really like. The deep mattes in here are beautiful, so rich and pigmented and blendable. I love these two shimmers as well as the Super Shock. The red shimmer, I mean, red shimmers are always a little bit short, not gonna lie. And this one's a sequin shadow, which I couldn't give less of a shit about. But I really do like this color story. It's so unique and I've been really liking playing around with it. It's in my current Shop My Stash. And I'm not a Star Wars boy, like I've never been. I don't really like Star Wars, to be honest. But the color story is really nice. Okay, now we're moving on to the brands that I have multiples of. So let's start off with Shroud Cosmetics. Of course I own the Shroud Creepy Cute palette. I mean, this is just, if you know Shroud, I feel like everyone has owned this palette at some point if you're into indie makeup. And this is one of the best pastel palettes I've ever used. The matte formula, Shroud's matte formula is gorgeous. It's very pigmented, very blendable. And because these are pastels, but they have like, they're more of like bright pastels. They're not so much like white-based pastels. I feel like they work really nicely. If a pastel is too white-based, then they just don't really look that different on the eyes, but this is fantastic. I love the black shade in here. The grey is also awesome. Prior to me owning like the Star Wars palette, this grey, like I used this a shitload because it was the only grey I owned in my collection. I love using Third Eye and Strawberry Milk as blushes. They look really beautiful for that. The formula is fantastic. I love the array in here, and I am tempted by the Creepy Cute too, because I love this one so much. Make another order and get the sequel to this palette because I really, really love it. It is such a brilliant little palette. And the theming is adorable, like creepy cute. This is exactly like my, like, it makes my heart scream. I love it so much. And the other Shroud palette I own is the Arcana palette. And this one is just spooky vibes. It's giving like witch vibes, which I absolutely love. The jewel tone mattes in here are beautiful. The shimmers, they're not my favorite shimmer formula because they are that like thicker, like more, not as shiny shimmers, if you know what I mean. But despite that, these colors are very unique to me, so I still really do enjoy this palette. I really like the shade Chalice, like I use that shade a lot. These grungy tones are beautiful, perfect for this time of year as well. I really, really like it. This is like one of the best like autumn palettes. It is just such a perfect grungy, like beautiful deep color story. Rightio, we're gonna move on to Lunar Beauty next. So the first palette I have is the Strawberry Dream palette. This was a gift from my friend Katie this year, and I'd been lusting after this palette for years. Like since this came out, much like the Natasha Denona Love palette, I was lusting after this one. And does this? I mean, it does kind of smell like strawberries, like a little bit. I really, really, really like Lunar Beauty's formula, and I will say I feel like Lunar Beauty have fallen off a little bit. Like they kind of strayed away from this format and like made, I think Moonspell 2 had like an extra row and the color story was so monochromatic that I was like, ew. Even though this is fairly monochromatic, but that's besides the point. And I don't know, I feel like the first few palettes from Lunar Beauty were like their best ones, and they kind of have fizzled out a little bit, at least in my opinion. But anyway, moving on to this palette, the mattes in here are beautiful. That's that beautiful like powdery, pigmented, easy to blend formula that I absolutely love. Most of the palettes I own are that formula, so I'll try and like refrain from making that comment because I feel like I can get a bit repetitive. The shimmers in here are lovely. Blue Diamond especially is such a beautiful, sparkly, iridescent shimmer. I really like Ruby Skies as well. This is just a wonderful, well-rounded palette, and these deep mattes here are stunning. stunning. I do find though that since this palette is very like, you know, pink heavy, I mean there is the pop of blue and gold, even though it is pink heavy, you can get like pretty samey looking looks with it, but I don't really mind because I love these colours and pinks just make my heart very happy. And my favourite Lunar Beauty palette, which has been discontinued. Why have all the best palettes that have ever existed been limited edition and discontinued? Like why? Why? Explain to me. But of course we are talking about the famous Moonspell palette. Ugh, I love her. I truly, truly love her. This is in my current Shop My Stash at the moment and I am bloody in love with her. Kind of off topic, but do you ever remember like certain palettes, like when you bought them and like the headspace you were in and what was going on? You know, you remember the day that you bought them and like all of that sort of thing. Like I remember I bought Lunar Beauty Moonspell in October 2020 when I had probably the worst mental breakdown of my life. It was extremely intense, and I remember I bought this palette because I said, you know what, fuck it, I need something nice. I need something positive to attach to, and I bought Moonspell, and I remember when I got this, I started crying. I started fucking crying and weeping when I was swatching it and like handling it, because the experience of this palette is just incredible. Like it feels like a book. Like it's even like perforated here, so it feels like pages. Like there's spine, everything about it is perfection. And because that's like one of the other reasons why I bloody love this palette, like the experience and the fact that it brought so much joy in a time of so much darkness. Like I will never get rid of this palette. And this is the best color story that Lunar Beauty have ever fucking done. Like, I mean, I love the way it's organized with the purples, the neutrals, and then the greens and the blues. It's just beautiful. The mattes in here are lovely. The shimmers are great, except for Hermione. Hermione can go eat rocks. Every time I use this, it's an absolute dream to work with, and I'm really disappointed that the Moonspell Volume 2, I was fully expecting to buy that one because of how much I love, love, love this one. But when I saw it, I was like, nah, I was fucking heartbroken. But in a way it was good because then, you know, I didn't want to buy it just because of collector's mentality. I'm trying to like not be in that. I used to be in that state of mind, but like I'm trying to like not let that come back. And yes, I kept the box that it comes in because I just love the experience. I just love it. So much joy comes from this palette. Let's move on to Kaleidos. So I have 3 palettes from Kaleidos. I used to have a lot more, but I did declutter them slowly because I just like wasn't gravitating towards them anymore. But yeah, I only have 3 Kaleidos palettes left. So let's talk about the one Futurism palette that I kept. And I kept the Futurism 7, I can't read numbers, 7 Sashimi City. This was sent in PR. I love this little boy so much. I had such a love affair with this one. This palette kind of like reinvigorated my love for neutrals. Like for a few years I like love neutrals, and then for another few years I absolutely despised them. And then when this palette came out and I received this, I fell in love with them again, and now I'm fully back into neutrals. Like, I love neutrals and colours just as much as each other now. The 2 duochromes in here are absolutely magnificent. The matte formula is beautiful, really easy to work with. I wish one of these like brown mattes was a different shade, like maybe like a more like a deeper mustard, I guess, because I think they're a bit too similar. But the formula in here is great. I don't know if this one is still available because like Kaleidos have been like weirdly discontinuing like some of their Futurism palettes, which is weird because like they're numbered. So like if they weren't numbered then that would be fine, but because they're numbered it's like, what's the point? I have been curious to try out a couple of their quads that they've released recently, but like I want them to bring back the Futurism format. This is like what put them on the map, and like it is beautiful, the experience is lovely, and I want them to bring them back because I think this was the last Futurism release that they did, and they released this like fucking like years ago. think like 2020 or like 2019. I don't remember, but it's been a while. And now we're talking about the two chonky palettes I have from them. So this one is the Escape Pod palette. I also received this in PR, and I believe they changed the packaging of this one. Like I think the inside, instead of being like I think this part is now white instead of purple, just to kind of like add a bit of differentiation. But this palette, I remember when I initially saw this palette, I was like, okay, it's a bit weird. I mean, I like it, but it's weird. But I bloody love this one. The purples in here are fantastic, like the matte purples, the shimmers. The shimmers in here are wonderful. I love the neutrals. The only shades I'm not really like, I literally don't care about are this blue, because this blue is absolute arse. This is like the shittiest blue I've ever used. And these two like peachy orangey shades, like they're a bit too similar together, and same with this beige matte. But apart from that, I love the formula in here. The formula is great. I love Kaleidos's, like this format from them is really lovely. I mean, it is a bit chonky, I will say. It takes up a lot of space, but you know what? She deserves to, because it is a really great formula, really great, like, really fantastic palette. So I mean, like, you deserve all the space in the world. And now we're moving on to my favorite Kaleidos palette. And of course it's discontinued, because all the best palettes are discontinued. I'm pissed. But it is the Kaleidos Club Nebula palette that I did in collaboration with Angelica Nyqvist. And this is, oh boy, the best palette Kaleidos has ever done, and I will not be taking any other debates. No, I don't care. Normally I'm very understanding, but no, I don't care. This is their best palette. Fight me. I will fight you on this. The deep mattes in here are so rich, pigmented, and just delicious. The duochromes, the shimmer choices are perfect. Firefly is one of my favorite shimmers ever, like, to exist. I love Nova so much. It's such a gorgeous, like, purpley pinky iridescent. Nebula is a beautiful peach. Like, I love this peachy row at the bottom. It's just, oh, makes my heart sing, makes me feel stunning. And like I said, the deep mattes in here are like what really like anchor this palette and just make it like, oh, it like gives a bit of like bright, like there's a bit of brightness, there's a bit of grunge in here. I'm surprised I haven't hit pan in this, because I can see like a couple of big dips in here. Like these two shades have big old dips, same with Firefly, but I try and rotate through my palettes so they all get like equal amounts of use. But this one is just beautiful. I love her. Oh, I want to use it again. Damn it. Hi there, sorry for breaking the flow of the video, but since filming the main chunk of this video, I did receive an order that I placed of a couple of palettes that I bought from Blend Bunny Cosmetics, and since, you know, since I haven't uploaded the video yet, I just wanted to show you them right now. So the newest palettes in my collection, this is the Blend Bunny All Done Up palette. As soon as this was released, like, I just knew that I wanted it, because these tones are what I've been using the most lately. If you've seen a lot of my recent looks on Instagram, they have been mostly this kind of grungy, neutral color story, and they released this palette right as my brand, Rain Cloud Candles, were launching a Halloween collection, the Halloween Haunts collection, along with some wax melts. And usually if a launch goes well, I like to treat myself to something nice, and I thought, since this palette is basically perfect for me and it's launching around the same time as I am, I just knew that I wanted it. And I have used this quite a bit since I've gotten it. I will be doing videos with this at some point. Let me know, what would you like to see? But yeah, honestly, I see the hype with Blend Bunny. The mattes in here are beautiful, so pigmented and easy to work with. Some of the most like buttery, creamy mattes I've ever had to work with, and the shimmers in here are beautiful. I think they really perfected their shimmer formula in this palette. And of course, I got a palette that was on my wish list for ages. I first put it in a anti-haul video where I was like, I love it, but I don't think I'd use it that much. But it just lives rent-free in my head, and I couldn't not get it. And it's the Surge palette. I can't believe I own this right now. This palette is huge, I will say. Like, normally I don't like really massive palettes. I think like All Done Up is like the maximum amount of shades that I like. But I just could not help myself with this. I love the way that Blend Bunny organizes her palettes, and the fact that this has neons as well. I haven't actually used this one just yet. I've been kind of like waiting for the perfect moment to use it, because I've mentioned it on Instagram, and I probably mentioned it on my community tab. Makeup's kind of taken a bit of a back burner, but this just makes me so excited. Like, I really cannot wait to reach into this. I did use this for my best friend's Halloween makeup, and goddamn, I used the purples in here. They were beautiful. I had no issues working with them. I also love how many deep mattes that Blend Bunny includes. I'm a big wench for deep mattes. They are beautiful. The shimmers in here, swatching them in comparison to the All Done Up, they don't seem as, like, wham bam in your face, but I remember hearing that, Blend Bunny did change the shimmer formula from Surge to the other palettes, because I think Surge was the first palette that she had shimmers in. But regardless, I cannot wait to use this. I probably will do a palette bingo video with this palette soon. I think that would be really fun. But I am so happy to finally have Blend Bunny palettes in my life, and so far from the little that I have used of All Done Up, I understand the hype. I fully understand it, and I'm so excited for this brand and seeing what they come out with next. But yeah. Surge, I cannot wait to use. Like, look how beautiful that is. Oh, love it. Anyway, that's this little mini segment over. Let's move back into the rest of the video. Let's move on to Odin's Eye, shall we? Now, I don't have a lot of, like, the newer Odin's Eye palettes. Like, the palettes that I own are, like, some of the first palettes, like, they ever released. But let's start talking about them. So the first one is the Elva palette, and this is, I believe this was their, was it their first or second? It was one of their first ones, and it's a lovely, like, rosy, neutrally colour story with a pop of yellow. And I bloody love this palette for the shimmers. The shimmers in here are so sparkly, duochromy, and, like, sheer sparkly, like that beautiful formula. It's such an easy palette to do, like, really soft, ethereal looks. The mattes in here, I find, like, are a bit of a different formula to their other mattes. Like, I don't know what they did, but they don't, like, they're not as, like, saturated as the other ones. I've been kind of in, like, a makeup rut lately, so, like, looking at all these palettes, I'm getting, like, excited and inspired. I really like it. I love talking about makeup. Now, my favourite Odin's Eye palette, and this used to be my favourite palette in my collection. I don't know if it is anymore. I gotta do another palette ranking video at some point, but I'm putting it off because it's difficult. It's difficult picking your favourites among your children. But this palette, I mean, I've hit 2 pans in it, as you can see, the 2 greens. I love these greens with my entire soul. This is the only palette where they included pressed glitters in them, and unfortunately it's in my favourite colour story, which bothers me because I never use the pressed glitters. But the colour story is lovely. I love the array of mattes in here. I really wish a few of these shimmers were mattes though. Like, I feel like that would be better if it was a matte. Actually no, that shade is just fine. These two, well, these 3 actually are satins, which I don't really like, I don't really use. There's a lot I would change about this palette, but still, I really do enjoy it. I love this colour story. It just makes me feel really happy and inspired, and I remember, like, using this a shitload when I first got it. Like, bloody hell, it just makes me feel like a little spring fairy. And then we've got 2 little mini palettes from them. So the first one is the Mini Forest palette, and this is a 6-pan palette? Yeah, 6-pan palette. There's a split pan in the middle. This one reminds me of Legend of Zelda and also Animal Crossing, like the colour story, and that just makes me really happy because those are 2 games that I absolutely loved as a child. And I mean, it's called Mini Forest and it's like a forest fairy vibe, which also is like me. That's like what I aspire to become. The shimmers in here are really foiled and intense. There's only one shimmer that's like not a satin, but it's not as like intense as the others, but that's fine. The 2 mattes in here complement everything really, really nicely, and I love this tiny little boy. And then the other mini palette I have from them is the Mini Skye palette. Oh, and I forgot to say that the Mini Forest and Mini Skye, these were gifted to me by my family. But Mini Skye, I mean, honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you, I mostly wanted this palette because it was called Skye. Even though it's not the same spelling as my name, it's still called Mini Skye, and I am Skye, and I am also mini. I am 5'1½". I'm a small boy, so yeah. That's probably the main reason why I wanted this, but the colour story is also really beautiful. The mattes in here are lovely. They are that sequin kind of formula, which normally I fucking despise, but the like sparkles in these 2 mattes like are so like minuscule that like you just tap off your brush and they turn into a matte. So that's fine. The iridescent in here is lovely. These 3 shimmers I love very much. This shimmer is just not a bit of me, but the rest of it I really, really enjoy. I really want Odin's Eye to bring more of these like small palettes out. Like, I really like 6 pans. 6 pans are like really inspiring to me. You can do a lot with them and have a lot of variety with them. Yeah, I don't have most of the newer Odin's eye palette format, and as much as I have a bit of FOMO that I missed out on the Red Dragon palette, specifically the palette that they did in collaboration with Judy. Like, that colour story at the time wasn't really a big fan of it, but now, oh, those like rusty tones are beautiful. And also the Hella palette that they did in collaboration with Angelica Nyqvist, that colour story was also absolutely gorgeous, but I was like, I definitely have that in my collection, but I have FOMO, I missed out on it and I'm annoyed. Okay, we have 3 more brands left to go, so let's go on into Sugarpill, and this is the Fun Size palette. My little baby, oh my little boy. And can you see something pretty fucking incredible? A fucking hit pan, bitch. I don't think I have ever seen this palette have pans in it. Like, out of all the people that I follow on Instagram, like, I consume a lot of beauty content. I don't think I've ever seen anyone hit pan in, like, this palette. And the fact that I have in this shade, like, oh, lovely. This palette has been a top favorite in my collection for years and years and years. Like, I don't even remember when I got it. Honestly, my memory is so shit, but this palette is still one of my top favorites. Like, it just triumphs them all. It is such a beautiful little rainbow palette. And thing is though, I find that this like formula on here, it's not like super pigmented, but it's pigmented enough that you can make these more pastel-y, but you can also build them up and make them a bit more bright. Like, I find that because of that, this palette is so universal, and because it's all matte, like an all matte rainbow, but like with a twist, like not the traditional like Roy G. Biv sort of colours. Like, you have like a pastel like minty green and like a periwinkle blue and like a warm toned purple. Like, the fact that like the tones in here are just make it a little bit different, and that just makes my heart very happy. I love this palette so much, and I'm pretty sure they've discontinued it. For fuck's sake. I don't actually know, maybe they still have it around. Either way, it's like kind of difficult to get, but this palette is just so good. It's such a cute little boy, and it's gaming themed, like, and it's got a cat on it. Even better. My voice is cracking because I'm gonna lose my fucking voice. And of course, because I love the Fun Size palette so much, I had to get the second one. I just had to get the sequel. I couldn't help myself. And the Fun Size 2 palette, I love the chartreuse like color here. I think they complement each other really nicely, and the fact that like little trash cat is drinking a boba tea is absolutely adorable. But this is the Fun Size 2 on the inside, and I think this complements the first one really nicely. I still use the first one a lot more than the second, but they work together so nicely, and I really do like this color story. This like quad specifically, like, I bloody love. The peachy tones in here are nice. And like I said, this quad, I use it mostly for that little quad right there. I think it just works so nicely. And the formula is a little bit more pigmented than the first one. I think they kind of like added a bit more oomph to it. This shade Power Up is a little bit dusty, not gonna lie, because it's such a pale yellow, but like, oh, my Fun Size palettes are my little babies. Like, I have given birth to these. I just love them very much. The penultimate brand we're going to be talking about is a new to me brand, and that is Fenty Cosmetica. So Fenty Cosmetica did reach out to me and wanted to send me a PR, so I got all 3 of their palettes and they've sent them all to me. And so yeah, let's start off with the Druid palette, and this is, Jesus, what it looks like on the inside. I believe Fenty Cosmetica also launched this year, and like, I'ma say this, their color stories are beautiful. I really like the owner as well. She's incredibly sweet. Like, honestly, every like brand owner that I've ever spoken to has been like absolutely like a peach. They have been so wonderful and sweet. Love them all very much. But yeah, this is the Druid palette. I have done a 2 looks plus review with it if you want to hear like further thoughts. And this was their first palette, and I do like this one quite a lot. I really like this grungy, like, caca color story. You know I love those shades. These 2 shimmers here are just incredible. I reached into this palette a lot for those 2. But I really feel like with time, like, you can just see, like, the growth and, like, see, like, that they already have improved so much, because this next palette is the Sorcerer palette, and, oop, if I can open it, the formula in here, like, the shimmers in here are just, like, amped up even more. Like, these 2 Actually, these three are like that squishy, like Colourpop, like Super Shock formula, and they are so, like, wet looking on the eyes, sparkly, intense, and just stunning. I do find that they crease on me a little bit, but if I just tap my finger over it, I just like pat out the creases. The mattes in here are wonderful, very saturated and intense. Love this deep purple. Oh my god, it is stunning. The blue shade I'm not a big fan of. It's a little bit, it doesn't like me. We're not friends. We don't get along. There's also like a jeweled multi-chrome in here, which like reminds me of like Cleona Oculus, which is like madness that it's in this tiny little palette. Really like the Sorcerer palette a lot. It is wonderful. And my favorite one of the Fantasy Cosmetica palettes, this one is the newest one that they've released, the Bard palette. It's just, oh, it's giving a bit of autumn, isn't it? I don't know what that accent was, and now I've just turned Wales. I have turned into Wales. I am sorry, I'm kind of losing the plot. I've been sat here so excited looking at all this makeup and losing my voice, and I'm getting hungry. I'm kind of losing it. I have done a first impression with this palette, and I'm hoping that this will be my next 2 looks plus review, but this palette is the best formula, like, that they have done out of all 3. Like, the mattes in here are wonderful. I do find that this shade deepens a bit when you blend it, but the shimmers in here, they're just so sparkly, super pigmented. Like, the base color is really pigmented, but they're still really sparkly and like shimmery and intense. They're duochrome as well. This one's a multi-chrome and it is wonderful. And I find that I just love these kind of autumnal tones and like these kind of like warm tones with my hair color, because I have my hair dyed ginger. So I feel like they just work really nicely. These tones make me feel really happy, and I'm a big whore. Big slag for autumn, and this is giving autumn vibes. Also, I'm just a big fan of the theming of Fantasy Cosmetica, like the fact that it's like fantasy themed, and my favorite games growing up were World of Warcraft and Skyrim, and I am still playing Skyrim to this day. I've played that since 2011, and I am currently trying to achievement hunt on my PC. But yeah, that is Fantasy Cosmetica. Really love that brand. And the final brand I'm going to be mentioning is my favorite brand. Yeah, they're my favorite brand, and that is Glaminatrix Cosmetics, and I have quite a few of their palettes. I don't have all of their palettes, but I have most of them. So let's start off with the one that I purchased myself. This is the Sandra Rose mini palette. They brought this back in a mini format last year in a very limited run, and when they said mini, they were not lying. Like, this pan size is titchy. Like, how can I... Hang on. The Fantasy Cosmetica palettes, this is like the average pan size. And then like, look how fucking tiny that is. That's like baby. That's like half the size. I love it. I love how tiny and cute it is. And the multi-chrome in here, Bloom, is wonderful. So this palette is just lovely. It's so inspiring to me. I love these colors. Again, it kind of reminds me of the Lethal, whatchamacallit, the After Dark palette, but kind of like a bit grungier, a bit more depth to it. I think there's a theme with the kind of palettes that I enjoy. I think we can sense a bit of a theme, can't we? I really enjoy this palette. It's so fun to me. And the good thing about Glaminatrix is all of their like palettes, every single one of them, the pans are magnetized in the pan, so you can take them out and like put them with your singles and rearrange them. I still have yet to rearrange this palette. Like, I remember I saw someone's rearrangement on Instagram and I really loved it. And I need to do that, but I keep forgetting to do that. I'm gonna do that today, actually. Remind me to do that today. I'll update in editing if I managed to actually rearrange the palette, and if I don't, then shout at me in the comments. And yeah, the other palettes I have from Glaminatrix, I am so happy that I received them in PR, and it makes my heart really happy because they're my favorite brand, and the fact that they like even thought to send me PR is like insane to me. And also, they're an Australian brand, and you know how I feel about Australian brands as an Aussie away from home myself. It just gets me. Anything, if you want to make my heart melt, get me anything, mention anything to do with Serbia and Australia. I'm a very proud boy. I'm very sentimental when it comes to my heritage, what can I say? But anyway, speaking of being sentimental to my heritage, this is the You Beauty palette, and this palette is inspired by Australia, which, I mean, come on. Come the fuck on. On the back, there's like different Australian animals along with the ingredients and shit, and the inside, bloody hell, it is a mess because I use this palette so much. But this colour story does scream Australia to me. There's actually three beautiful multi-chromes in here. Flaming Galar's one of my favourite multi-chromes ever. G'day is such a wonderful shade. The mattes in here are beautiful, really soft. Glaminatrix's matte formula is probably my favourite because it's really soft and pigmented and easy to blend, like most formulas that I really do enjoy, but like their formula is just top tier. And all the names are like named after Australian slang, so it's like even more like sends me. Like I remember like my mum uses the word whoop whoop all the time, and it's just a great phrase. I always say she'll be right as well. Budgie smugglers, like come on. The fact that they included budgie smugglers in this palette makes my heart very happy. This palette sparks a shitload of joy. It makes me so happy. The colour story is wonderful, and just it just makes my heart melt. I love it very much. Next Glaminatrix palette is probably another one of, like, it's in the top 5 favourite palettes for me, and it's the Nocturnal palette. I believe they had some issues with this palette, like it was going to be a limited edition and then they couldn't bring it back, but now they're going to be bringing it back with slightly different formula because, I mean, naturally this is like the fucking best palette they've done, let's be honest. Because look at this inside. She is magnificent. Like, look at that. The multi-chromes, duochromes in this palette are incredible. Milky Way and Constellation are just gorgeous. The colour story is that grungy, like earthy toned dream that I love. It also reminds me a lot of Lunar Beauty Moonspell. Like, this is kind of like a Yarsified Lunar Beauty Moonspell, which makes me love it even more. I love the black in here. This like periwinkle is gorgeous. Every time I wear this palette, I get so inspired and I just feel so happy. It sparks so much joy. And again, their pans are magnetic, so you can use them in your singles. I need to do like some more single shadow videos. I need to do some more palette builder videos. And the final palette in my collection is one of the newer palettes in my collection, and this one is an unexpected love, and it is the Nearly Natural palette. This boy, I did do a 2 looks plus review with it, and Jesus Christ, I love it so much. This reminds me of the Blend Bunny Dollhouse palette, which I really did want, but like, oh my god, this is one of my most used palettes in my collection, even though I haven't owned it for too long. I've only owned it for like a few months. Like, the mattes in here, the choices, there's so much variety in here. There's like mauves, warm tones, olives. The shimmers in here are so sparkly and intense and foiled, and I just feel beautiful. Every time I wear this palette, I just feel glamorous and beautiful, and I just can't, it's fantastic. It is just magnificent. This is like one of my favorite neutral palettes. This one and the Geology Pilbara palette are my 2 favorite neutral palettes, like tied for #1 as favorites. They're just so good. I've taken this like on staycations. It is just such a wonderful neutral palette. I feel beautiful every time I wear it. I love Nearly Natural. She is perfect. An unexpected love, but such a hardcore love for me. I know that Glaminatrix also released another palette in this kind of like format and packaging called the Glamorous palette. I don't know if I'm getting that one sent in PR. I'm not too sure, but I will be buying it if I don't get it at some point because I love Glaminatrix's formula. I'm a big bitch for them. But anyway, with all of that said and done, let's get into the outro of this video. So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Do let me know, what are some of your favourite palettes in your collection? I would really like to know. If you'd like to see more makeup content from me, then you can follow me on my Instagram. It's beautyybyskye right here. I post all my looks there and I'm active on there every single day. This look right here is a recreation of Taylor Swift's Midnight's album cover because I'm filming this on the Midnight's release day, and god damn, I love this album so much. It's her best album. If you'd like to support me further, I do have my own small business, Rain Cloud Candles Co. We are a small queer-owned business based in the UK, and we make handmade candles and wax melts now. The link to shop will be down below, along with our social media if you'd like to support us. We recently just came out with wax melts and our Halloween collection, which I'm super proud of, so link to shop will be down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you here. And as always, stay safe, wash your hands, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!